Hi everyone, this is Megha Mawandia, and we're going to be talking today about sensory needs. And I'm very excited to have Hiral Sangoi join us, who's an occupational therapist I've had the pleasure of working with for some time. So thanks. Let me just invite Hiral into our conversation and we can get started. So Hiral, you're there? And you are. I think we're getting smoother at the transition or starting our sessions out. Welcome, Hiral.
Welcome, Neeraj. Hi, Megha.
Thank you for joining
Thank you
us
for
today
joining
on
us
Teams
today on
to
Teams
talk about
to
such an
talk about
important
such an
topic,
important
which is
topic,
sensory
which is
needs,
sensory,
right? You and I
right?
both know that it plays a very important role in the development
Yes.
of our children and the management of their moods very often. So, could you shed a little bit
Hello.
of
Share a
light
little
of
bit of
what it
light of what
means?
it means.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
hear me?
you can hear me. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag. 1 second.
Okay. Is this better?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. So I was wondering if you could start off with sharing a little bit about what exactly do we mean when we talk about sensory needs and how does this impact our children on a daily basis?
Yeah. So, just like you mentioned, we've been working with a lot of children with sensory processing challenges. And, before we even go to the term sensory processing
Sorry.
difficulty or challenges, what I do want to say is sensory processing is a neurological process which is there for all of us across the developmental phases. So, sensory processing is basically, in a very simplistic manner or a term, how the brain organizes sensations and puts it to use so we can function effectively in our day-to-day environment.
Hmm.
And this is something that is also different for different people. So it might be a little different for you versus me versus somebody else. So all of us have particular ways of understanding, processing sensory information.
Hmm.
Now, when this processing becomes a little bit of a glitch somewhere, or when the brain is not able to organize or receive the sensory information well, when it's not able to understand or give meaning correctly to the sensory information that it is receiving, that's when we might face difficulty. And when the difficulty is big enough that it's impacting your functioning in school, for example, with peers on the playground, at home, that's when you would, call it like a sensory processing disorder.
Right.
So, and let's maybe talk a little bit about what sensory processing is, because
Yeah,
uh,
but
yeah,
can
but
we just
can we
pause
just
there
pause there?
and use a couple of examples? Because I do think a lot of people struggle with what this really means. And correct me if I'm wrong, because this is generally my go to explanation. And I know a lot of adults who find it very difficult to, when you're out at a restaurant when it's not COVID and you're amongst a group of 10, 15 people, but it's a restaurant. There is music, there are waiters, there are other tables of people. And some people on that table find it very difficult to stay focused on the conversation that is going on in that table, because it could be broken up into multiple conversations. You know how it is. Sometimes A is talking to B, A is talking to C, and B and D are talking together, and there's a lot of cross communication. And because there is so many different sounds that they're not able to tune sounds out, and that becomes, in a very simple way, a sensory processing challenge where for some people it's very easy. They don't even notice there's background music going on, they don't even notice that there are other people talking because they're so engaged in the conversation they're in. But for many it's not. So I know some people who hate going in groups because they're like, I can't pay attention. Yeah, I can't pay attention. It doesn't work for me. I'd rather sit and have a conversation where I know I won't be distracted. So, can we use, is that a fair way to describe what sensory processing challenges look like?
Look like, yeah, it's one of the ways where you said that, when there are so
Yeah.
many people around, when it's an environment when you're receiving input through sound because there are other people in the restaurant talking, there are bright lights probably because it's a public place, there is food of different flavors, different odors, different smells which I might or might not be comfortable with. Again, that's a sensory input. I'm probably sitting on a chair whose texture I might or might not be comfortable with. Again, that's a sensory input through my sense of touch. Another important sensory input that we generally don't, talk about so much, we don't know very obviously, is your sense of body awareness. So if I have to pass the plate to Megha, who's sitting on that side, I automatically do that without having to think where my hand is going to go, with how much force do I hold that plate, how do I hold my fork to eat that little piece of idli or whatever it is,
Do I
whether
take
it's
my
too much.
fork to my mouth or do I take my mouth to my fork?
Oh, and if I'm going to put too much pressure, it's going to fall and spill. And obviously, it's going to create this whole big thing where, oh, I couldn't do it well. And in a social context, it's definitely something that, we would feel a little bit sort of, not very comfortable about. So it's your sense of body awareness. It's your sense of movement, that I can't sit for 2 hours in a restaurant just because people are, we're in a gathering. I need to get up, move, give myself a break, walk a little bit, and then come back. And then maybe I'll be better ready or available to interact with the group that I am with. So it's also your sense of movement. And one of the other important sense is your sense of interoception. Means how your body is feeling internally, how hungry I am, how not hungry I am. How is it that, how relaxed I am, how tensed or anxious I am to be in a group or in a crowd like that. Yes, so it's a wonderful example of how sensory processing is different for a lot of us. We would, some of us would prefer a party with 2 people, and that's a party for me. But some of us would like a group of 10 to 15, and it's different for different people. Of course,
And I'm
because we're
so
talking.
glad you just said that, Hiral, because it's actually a pet peeve I have when people start off with describing I'm an introvert or an extrovert, because I feel it takes away from so many other things that could be going on that we use as this collective label of introvert or extrovert. It could be all of these things, right? It could be that I don't like these things about being in public. It doesn't mean I don't like to meet people. Or it could just be that I like to have quieter conversations. So people tend to judge themselves, I feel, very harshly with this terminology of being an introvert or an extrovert also. And I feel like this language of sensory diet, sensory requirements, sensory needs, it allows us to explore so many more possibilities than
Absolutely.
labels like, oh, this one's an introvert, oh, this one doesn't like restaurants. It's not so simple.
Absolutely. And because you said that, sort of let me also highlight that how deeply our sensory processing is connected to our emotional well-being. And of course, then our social well-being, because when we connect with people, there is this social emotional component that we are looking at. So, how calm and relaxed and confident I'm feeling in my own body is going to impact how I'm going to respond and react to situations and people around me. So if in that restaurant I am somebody who cannot take the sound and the light, I might not be able to converse well with the people. And like you said, that might come across that, oh my God, this one doesn't like to talk so much, or this child is, shy, or this child is all over the place. And sometimes we need to look beyond those manifestations or behaviors, as we would call it, into what is going on, which is why a particular person or a particular child is doing this, because all of us want to adapt to an environment that we are in, and that's the
Yeah.
human innate ability and
Uh,
the need.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you because I think there's a lot of feedback going into our Facebook, which is simultaneous right now. So, did the speaker setting change from what we have? Because I just checked. that there is feedback.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. I think it's
should
working now. I think it's working now. I'm not hearing it. Sorry. Needed to check that. So yeah, and I was thinking, Hiral, now what if we were to take the example you've just said of the restaurant and move it into a classroom? And now let's see the judgments flying around, because now that classroom could be lit up, noisy, lots of people, lots of things going on. Maybe it's not in the classroom, it's in the lunch break. Maybe yours is the child who always seems to be getting into trouble at lunch or getting into fights at lunch. But actually, what could be going on is some sort of an sensory overload, which the child is letting you know through that outburst, right? So it happens in so many scenarios where you're supposed to be able to be at your best attention, but you don't, right? And
Yes.
yeah, it could be heat, right? We just have a comment that could it be heat, and that could also be a sensory function, right? um Heat, humidity, etc. Temperature can play a role.
Temperature can be one of the sensory concerns. And yeah, it can be those. And what we're talking about right now is this term that we call as when you're taking in sensory information, your body or your brain is perceiving it as too much. So if we have two children, one child might be absolutely fine in a cafeteria sort of a setting, and another child might find it too much because the sound is a lot for him, the noise is a lot for him, the light is a lot for him. So imagine sort of comparing it to a cup. If the cup that I have is small in size, even a little bit of sensory information is going to fill my cup. And then I'm going to reach my threshold and I'm going to be like, oh, that's enough for me. So I might be one of those people who might not enjoy roller coasters, who might not enjoy too much of movement and physical play, who might not enjoy places where there is too much going on around, who might be bothered by tags in the clothes, the socks, might be very choosy about the kind of clothes that I want to wear, where I want to stand, what I want to do. Because I'm very, very particular about the way my body is going to react or respond to that sensory information. Versus, imagine I have a big cup now. So then you put in sensory information, you put in sensory information, you put in sensory information. That's when my cup gets full. And these are the kids you see who want to touch things around, who want to move a lot, who probably can't sit in place, and then they'll be, oh, miss, can I go to the washroom? Oh, miss, can I do this? Oh, can I touch this other person sitting next to me? Or who are kids who are risk takers. So in the playground, they like to go high up, they like to go swinging a lot, they like to, so these are people whom you see that they are, these more sort of active or sort of, and then they find it hard to focus. Maybe they find it hard to attend. Maybe sometimes they're actually moving because they want to attend, because that movement is actually helping them to look, to respond, to focus, and to do things like that. So yes, we are looking at two different types of styles of sensory processing. Maybe people who are
And that's
extremely,
important, right? You could have the sensitive and the what do you call it? Undersensitive.
so you have, yeah, you have over responsive, which is too sensitive, and you have under responsive, which means I need more to help myself feel alert, to make myself available to what I am doing right now. And sometimes you see these patterns and you see variations. Like I might be too sensitive to touch, but I might like a lot of movement. So you can have differences in the different sensory systems as well.
Yeah. And I like this question that do you identify these challenges in later years like teens? And because I have a lot of parents, when they start to do work on their children's sensory needs, they look at it and they say, oh my God, I feel all those things and I feel I should be working on myself. And they feel like they possibly have struggled a lot in their life because their sensory needs were not met to their tune. So this is not related only to childhood, right? Could you explain a little bit about how it could look different at different ages?
Absolutely. It's not, again, because it is a developmental process. Everybody, all of us across our lifespan, have the process of sensory processing going on. Now, it's not just related to childhood, it does show in adults as well, because your brain and your body is constantly sort of growing and changing. So, for example, uh, if I have to take my own example, I am not very good with car rides. So if I'm in a closed car on a windy road, which probably has a lot of traffic and there is a lot of start and stop, I know that half an hour journey is really going to make me feel pukey. It's going to make me feel uncomfortable. So that is me as an adult having a different way of, or a slightly different way of processing input through movement. Now, if I were a child, I would have probably cried that, oh, I don't want to do this because it is hard for me and because it is making me feel so difficult. But obviously, over the years, because I'm aware that this is my style or this is my way of understanding movement, or this is what my body can take and what it cannot, probably I will devise ways to work around it. So I know that I want to keep my car open. I know that I can chew something while I'm in a moving car. I know that I can listen to music and that helps me to feel better. So yes, it does show in adults, right? We all have preferences. Some of us like certain textures of clothes. Some of us absolutely don't like them. Some of us prefer to sort of go on these, rides and movement and roller coasters and things like that. Some of us are more sort of, quieter, and we would like our little snuggling inside the blanket and staying there to help us feel better. So yes, it does. It is shown, it is seen in adults as well. It's just that, we always vary our lifestyles according to the sensory needs.
So
that
we adapt.
We adapt. Like if I am tired working on a laptop for really long, I like to go and take a walk outside. Or I like to
But
have
see,
a
those
nice...
are positive adaptations, right?
Yes. Yes.
But all adaptations are not positive. So, for example, something I notice is for some children, it could be about control, and adults, that because they know there is a shorter sensory tolerance cup, they have a very high level of control of things. So they don't even realize they're doing it because they have a shorter cup. It's just an inbuilt mechanism which makes them come across as very controlling, but they're not actually being controlling. They're trying to control the amount of room they have in their sensory cup. I see aggression as another adaptation. So control, aggression. I also sometimes see withdrawal as an adaptation of sensory needs, right? I see, to be honest, in some adults, addictions as a adaptation of sensory needs. So can we need to understand that these are important to be addressed, because it's not just about me knowing how to adapt on my own in skills like a chewing gum or a medicine or a walk or a break. Those are positive adaptations. But if I'm not given the right kind of support or information, I could go down into negative adaptations, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I know of a friend who is, like an adult, and she is extremely sensitive to touch. And whenever we meet, and she's one of the very good friends, but she won't still be comfortable hugging me. And I know that, and I'm okay with that. But when she's with somebody else, it does impact her social life. And she does say that, say, dating is not very easy for her, because it is hard for her to connect with people through touch, and we all connect through touch with friends, with family, with loved ones.
And if you're telling me it's going to impact my dating or my friendships, it's also going to impact my self-esteem. So then that's an adaptation, right? Where my self-esteem will be adapted. Wow. It's like
Yeah,
the
like I know of a little boy, whom I've been seeing for sessions, and he is a little clumsy with movements. He cannot sort of keep up with the way kids his age play football, because I can't coordinate the actions on the football field, because it's movement. It's coordinating eye movements with leg movements. It's making sure that I'm looking at all the other 11 players on the field and sort of processing information and doing what I need to do. Now, all this is hard for him because where he is in space, where his body is in space is difficult. So every time before going to a football class, this kid has a meltdown for half an hour, and his mom, obviously wants him to go and he doesn't want to go. And then it becomes into the struggle between the child and the parent. And this is a child who sees himself in the class as, oh, I can't do this, so I'm not good at this. And it's impacting his confidence. Obviously, with his mom, it's impacting their relationship. So, unless I understand that why.
And the mom's confidence.
And the mom's confidence. And this is just one part of the day, right? And, and like moms know, right? If it's 24 hours, it's pretty much brushing, bathing, finish your homework, go to school, do this, do that, all of that. So if, I do not understand that why my child is having this challenge, or why is it that he is responding like that, I'm going to be sort of at loss of how appropriately I can sort of help him or support him. And then, yes, you're right. Confidence might be hard. Self-image might be a challenge in the later years. Relationships might sort of suffer a little, and things like that.
Yeah.
So
and going back then to the early parenting years, this is where people could be struggling when it comes to bathing their children. This is where they could be struggling when it comes to brushing teeth, cleaning off, toilet training, cleaning potty of a young baby, feeding, textures, right? So we see these as this could create delays in movement. Like I think you and I have talked about it with a couple of cases where when children actually aren't very exploratory or are very exploratory, that tells us a lot about a sensory need of theirs, that they're not feeling comfortable to get out of that mat or that comfort zone into another texture, which is a natural instinct to explore, or they're being too daring and going too far into exploration, and the natural instinct to get to feel like there's danger and I need to stop, they're not able to do that. It's not there, right? So the cues start coming as early as that. We don't have to wait.
The cues start coming as early as from the time the child is born. If I have to sort of briefly, pinpoint some of the things that as parents we can be aware of, I think colicky infants is one of the big signs that I look for, because there is a reason why the child might not be sleeping well through the night. Difficulty latching for breastfeeding is something that I might look for in very early stages of infancy, because maybe I'm sensitive around the mouth and it's fine. And that's why I'm finding hard to, sort of latch on to the breastfeed. Difficulty changing diapers, difficulty, allowing caregivers to hold them sometimes, letting them sort of tip down, up and down when you rock them, when you give them a bath and things like that.
Those my God, you've like just listed most of the concerns I had with my child. And
at that time, and unless we know about it, or unless we know of someone who knows about it, we would always, we
blame yourself.
Yeah.
As a new parent, you just blame yourself. And I do know for a fact that my children do have certain sensory needs, but for so long I just struggled with it because I didn't know. And I kept, because everyone else talks about how their parenting is easy, simple, etc. But nobody is there to guide you, which is why these conversations are so important so early on, right? They're important for everyone to join.
It is. You can understand your loved ones better. You can understand how they will relate to you better. Like if I know my friend is not comfortable hugging, I know, giving her a touch or holding her hand is something that is going to equally make our relationship, like that's our way of connecting now. Yeah. Understanding children like that is better. That,
it's so powerful, right? Because I have people who don't respect their children's boundaries and the children struggle with it. where parents smother the children, and if only we're able to understand that respect. I think we have a client of yours on board. Should we check if they'd like to join us to talk a little bit about their
Oh,
experience?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Pooja, if you are able to, we'd love to join you because I think you've had a great relationship with Hiral in the sensory needs of your child, right? And if she's able to join us, she will. We'd welcome. And she has.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of moving and you're like, so that's why I'm looking like a monkey right now. So I would have.
Hiral, every time someone says that to me, I feel very nervous because this is how I always look. I never look any different.
We also almost because like I have been all over
Yeah.
right now here. That's fine.
Yeah, that's okay. So thank you so much for joining us here, Pooja. And I particularly was interested to have this chat with you because I've been seeing how you've been working towards inclusion, diversity, and just understanding needs, right? And what do you think understanding sensory needs for your daughter has helped you in this journey of parenting?
Started because we were so clueless. So we also got all the information that